Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Scriptly Adapted.
Yes.
I am your host, Keone Howard, with
Kate Knowles. Hey guys.
We are here to present, it's been a while, but we are here to do a show on Oz the Great and Powerful.
Indeed.
Great film.
Yeah.
Good cast. Great director in Sam Raimi. Tell us about what the synopsis is about Oz the Great and Powerful.
Yeah, well, Oz the Great and Powerful with James Franco, is basically a prequel to the story The Wizard of Oz. It's a great story about Oz kind of finding himself, but it's his story, how he becomes the wizard. You also get sub-stories about, you know, how the witches, how they're related and how they split off.
We see the development of the Wicked Witch.
Yeah, and how that happens. And, you know, it's a really neat twist to such a classic film, which was one of my favorites as a kid. So I used to go around telling people my name is Dorothy. Don't ask. That and the Queen of England. But anyway. James Franco is a struggling magician. He goes to all these county fairs, and he's really not a nice guy. You know,
you get that from the film that
jerking people around.
You begin to see that he's pretty much of a jerk in the film.
Yeah, and basically he travels to Oz to kind of discover himself, and that's basically the gist of the moral of the story. But the real story is how he becomes the wizard,
and you don't really see the caring character of the Oz until later in the story. And that's when you start to actually feel for James Franco's character instead of actually kind of hating him in the beginning. Right.
He's a very round character, as I like to say. In the beginning, you'd think he's kind of flat. There's only one dimension to him, but I like to think of him as a very round character. He's kind of like an onion. You have to peel back the layers a little bit.
That's cool.
And I think he is an in-depth character, and he has a lot to offer, and I think you see that as the movie progresses. Tell us about one facet of the movie that you liked.
So, Kate, let me tell you
something.
Out to
you.
I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan. I think he's a great director. I think a lot of his work is sort of underrated. His earlier stuff. Underrated. But he does get the recognition here and there for his bigger films like the Spider-Mans and, you know, this one. But I have to say, one of the aspects of the film that I really enjoyed watching was actually see Sam go back to his style. Even though this is a more family-friendly film, a lot of his stuff earlier on was not more horror genre-related. And what he does in his films, he has a specific thing. He uses extreme close-ups, and he uses
I noticed that.
And he uses quick dollies in and out of whatever object he's focusing on, or within the environment he's like every filmmaker, he has a particular style that he sticks to, and you'll get glimpses of it in his different films, even though the film itself is completely different than anything he's ever done before as far as content and story and environment. I believe there was a quick dolly on James Franco in one scene, and I believe he used a couple of extreme close-ups in a couple of scenes having to do with the witches.
Especially in the beginning, too, at the carnival.
Yes, especially in the beginning. Sam has a way of creating an environment that allows you to sort of go into this dream fantasy world, which is so perfect for this movie. But when I first heard that Sam was doing an Oz prequel, I was like, oh, Sam Raimi doing a Oz prequel? All I kept thinking was Evil Dead, if you guys know what I'm talking about. Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, all these cult classic horror films that he did before that is so far off from what Oz is about. But with Oz, I have to say, watching it, I did think back to Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. And I was like, you know what? The environment and the content of the story is perfect for that. You know, because it's sort of fantastical. You know? And Army of Darkness is a horror film, but also fantastical. Also, Evil Dead, fantastical.
It kind of
goes hand
propelled him out of his realm a little bit, but at the same time, it enabled him to really showcase his style in a way.
It enabled him to showcase some of his style, but also showcase other things that maybe some viewers or watchers of his films are not used to. Those two things was the extreme close-ups. He definitely had some dollies. weird camera angles on the ways the cameras were tilted onto an actor's face or in an environment. Those were the main focuses of what I noticed. Also, Danny Elfman did the music. Great score. He's worked with Danny Elfman on Darkman, Spider-Man 1 and 2. Army of Darkness, so they were very familiar. So I also got that feel from it, you know, remembering his older films,
right, like a nostalgic kind of feeling.
Listening to Danny's theme, watching the extreme close-ups and the dollies. That was my thing. How about you?
Well, I have to say, it popped out to me because I always like bright colors and stuff like that. The colors and the production and the set design for this movie was just great. And I thought it really went well with the story. It was very fantastical. I mean, you're talking about a fictional place that doesn't exist with fairies and witches and... No. Yeah, it's a little weird. No, I'm just kidding. No, but, it was so beautiful. It was very aesthetically pleasing. When he lands in Oz and all you see is the sprawling, like, rainbow-esque landscape, it was beautiful. It really was. I was like, I'd like to be there right now. Another thing I noticed was his portrayal of, we often associate light and white and everything like that with harmony and peace and good. And we also associate dark and brambles and stuff like that with evil. And he really took the colors seriously when he was portraying that. The Emerald City, apparently, it was modeled off Art Deco 1920s, off a very famous, and I will tell you in a second, very famous architect, and the reason why the director liked it and the production set designer liked it so much was that even though it's green and it's, whatever, there's still harsh angles of light and dark because of the way it was constructed.
Especially in her environment, in that castle. You got very limited light. A lot of things were lit in almost a shadowy type of lighting. It was very dark. You definitely got the two elements of who was good and who was bad.
The architect's name was Hugh Ferris, and he was huge in the 1920s to really influence Art Deco, and that's what the production set designer loved. It was just the lighting and the thought process that went into it, and he really used it to really help the audience get a sense of evil versus good and right versus wrong. But at the same time is that there's good in everybody. And the world is a beautiful place, really, and if you give it a chance.
Also, you got to remember, they also had huge help in creating the environment, also because they had the Wizard of Oz to look at. When the Wizard of Oz was made, I believe 40s. I believe it was the early 40s. Color was introduced in film. For a 1940s film was bright and colorful, and the emerald greens and the yellows, and it was just they sort of had that platform to be like, okay, let's take this and this and this and heighten it in today's technology.
And with what we have today is just unfathomable, really.
What they did basically to me was take that and boost it 10 times, 10 times more. They had a good, but even with the environment that they did create, there was some original elements to it.
I remember you telling me about that, and I read it when I was doing research, that they started off the beginning of the movie in black and white, and that's how The Wizard of Oz starts. For those of you who have not seen it, I'm sure we all have.
I got really excited when I saw that. I was
I thought that's a great tribute. I thought that was a great tribute. They basically took their influence from a lot of different factors.
They did.
And I really like the fact that if you're doing a prequel and you're paying homage to an old classic, that you're going to pay homage to it the right way. By integrating different things from that movie into this one. And you're right. I mean, you can do wonders with the technology we have now. So it was great to see, them really utilize that. And that was my favorite aspect.
Overall, I absolutely loved the film. It took me back to the old school Wizard of Oz and just thinking of Dorothy and the songs and the environment and the mood of the film is just so happy and uplifting. In Sam Raimi's, you get that towards the end, but you also get fantastical and dark, creepy, and all these other moods that not necessarily was in the original because it was made in a way different time era, and there were movie codes that they had to follow, stuff like that. But with this, I felt like it was, like you would say, well-rounded, or it came full circle. Like you got to feel the different emotions through characters and the environment, which made it, to me, a well-rounded film. Sam Raimi hit it out the park. Yeah. Good movie. Yeah. I would definitely recommend it. Really heartfelt towards the end. You actually feel for him towards the end.
Good message for kids too, I think. And you know, it's.
How about you? What do you?
I just thought
overall.
I thought the movie was very good. I was a little skeptical going into it. I mean, you know, James Franco is very good, I think, but he's not an extraordinarily gifted actor. But you know, I was just kind of like, oh, this is gonna be, you know, like a fluffy movie. But it was a fluffy movie, but it had depth as well. And I think the message that was taught, which was, you know, there is good in all of us, and it takes fighting adversity and overcoming obstacles to really find that in ourselves if you're not already aware of it.
Right.
And I think that was his story.
That was his story.
And that's how you rise to greatness. And so he became the Wizard of Oz. And I think that's how it happens.
And powerful.
Thanks, guys. Stay tuned. We're going to be coming up with a new show soon.
See you later. Thank you.